This war is an attempt to decimate an already weakened Iran, and it's important to look at it in the context of both the 12-day war that happened last year in 2025 and following on from the protests that we've seen across Iran since the very end of last year through to today. Trump at that time claimed to have destroyed Iranian nuclear capabilities. Now he's articulated some claims that this is a war to protect America and its allies from the Iranian nuclear program. Either he destroyed last year or he didn't, and there really is a threat. But neither of those two stories are not consistent with each other. On the other hand, there have also been articulations that this is a war to help and be backing the protesters within Iran. These protesters have been speaking out and going out onto the streets bravely, and thousands of them being killed for doing so by the regime, partly in response to an economic crisis which was worsened by that 12-day war last year and has also been aggravated by decades of harsh economic sanctions, which can be seen as a form of economic warfare against the Iranian people, claiming to only be harming the regime. And he's saying that now the people of Iran who have been protesting should come forth and take over their government. So in that sense, he's wanting to make a story that there's this potential for Iranians to take over, for there to be a regime change. But it seems more like there's a strategy of just wanting to weaken Iran, to remove the Islamic Republic as a threat to Israeli and American interests in the region, and the shift to, say, a democracy that many of those protesters are really hoping for is not going to be very easy. The weakening of the regime, the removal, the assassination of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, does not mean that it's just easy for people to go in and take over a country. It's very hard to set up governance structures and all of the institutional frameworks. And it's far more likely that this is just leading to chaos and hoped for disintegration of the country. In terms of what this war means for the people of Iran, we really need to recognize that the people of Iran are not a single entity. There is a great amount of diversity in terms of what the people want and how different people are responding to this war, both Iranians within inside the country and Iranians in the diaspora all around the world. We see mostly two kind of camps within the media depictions that we have of Iranian responses to this war. On the one hand, we see images of people in Iran coming out onto the streets mourning the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei and standing in support of the regime. So we see this picture of people who are opposed to the war and in favor of the Islamic Republic. On the other hand, we see pictures of people also on the streets of Iran in various cities and towns around the country, pouring out onto the streets, celebrating the killing of Khamenei. We also see people in the diaspora celebrating and going out with flags and singing and dancing to celebrate this removal of a very harsh dictator who is very unliked by these people. He's been responsible for much killing and suffering within the country. So these people are in favor of the war. They're thanking Trump for coming and helping protesters, and they're glad that the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic has been killed. But this image kind of creates a really false dichotomy, as if these are the only two choices, makes it a binary choice as to whether you're for or against one thing or the other. In reality, I think many, many more Iranians sit in that grey area in the middle, where they're feeling that it's actually possible to hold these two truths in their minds at the same time, that we can both be very angry and opposed to the Islamic Republic and all of the suffering and killing that it has caused, and also be opposed to foreign intervention. Iran has had a long history of meddling by Britain and then America, and also Russia in its history, meddling in its internal affairs, and it's never led to anything good. There's also recognition that the American and Allied invasions into Afghanistan and Iraq caused enormous suffering and destabilization and division within those countries, and Iran and Iranians do not want that. Those who are celebrating the killing of Khamenei are hopeful that this is going to lead smoothly and peacefully to a transition towards a liberal democracy. And I fear, I hope this isn't the case, but I fear that they may be very disappointed. And I think we need to listen to those voices in that middle ground in terms of what this all means for many, many Iranians who are feeling very worried about what the future holds for the country. This is a hugely significant moment for Iran, following on from the unprecedented attacks last year in the 12-day war in June of 2025. These attacks are following on from that, and the killing of the supreme leader obviously has stepped up that attack to a whole new level. This is leading to the IRGC, the security forces of the Islamic Republic, and the elite establishment forces of the Islamic Republic to be even more confident in their claims that people on the streets protesting the regime and calling for reform and change and democratization are being backed by foreign forces. They now feel that that has been proved, and so they can be even harsher and stronger in their repression of these sort of domestic traitors in their midst. So it gives an excuse to the regime to securitize Iranian society even further and to be even more violent in its responses to any popular uprisings that people may still be brave enough to go out and participate in. So it's an extremely significant moment for the regime and for the people of Iran. Whether it's an existential moment for the Islamic Republic, in other words, whether this means that this is the end of the Islamic Republic, is another question. Already, since the killing of the Supreme Leader Khamenei, the Expediency Council of the Islamic Republic has set up a triumvirate of 3 leaders who will be taking that role of Supreme Leader and leading the country and setting strategy and taking that leadership role. And in the meantime, the Assembly of Experts, which is an appointed body which exists for this very moment, they have been waiting for 38 years to be called forth to identify and select a successor to Khamenei to take leadership of the Islamic Republic. And all of these institutions are set up, plans have been put in place, especially following the 12-day war last year. The regime has put in place measures to anticipate this precise situation. So there'll be a further crackdown, there'll be greater violence, greater coercive force, greater securitization, and all of those who have both material, financial, and ideological adherence to the regime will be fighting to protect it in some form. It may become more violent. The IRGC may take a more prominent role and may be less tempered in their understandings of their hopes for the nuclear program within Iran than Khamenei was. We've already seen some very significant regional implications of this war, these attacks from Israel and the United States. which were unprovoked. There was no imminent threat. Many would interpret this war to have been an illegal war. And Iran has been responding to these attacks and attacking military bases or countries that have American military bases in them. Many countries in the Gulf region have military bases of the United States and are allowing and enabling American attacks onto Iranian soil. So the response of the Iranian regime is to attack those countries. This would include places like the UAE, Oman, Jordan, I think, has been attacked, Qatar. These countries are being attacked. This is having an impact on places that are often considered to be calm, stable, desirable locations. People go on holiday to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Oman. Now the airports are being attacked. Commercial districts, I think, of Dubai have been attacked. So this is causing a lot of destabilization, and it will be affecting travel and commercial business in these countries. Iran is really hoping to put pressure on these Gulf states to then put pressure onto the United States to leverage to get Trump to sort of reduce the intensity or to stop the attacks on Iran. So it's having huge implications in the region and actually beyond, where we see in places like Kashmir, Pakistan, where we see pro-Iran demonstrations leading to some destabilization in these other parts of the world where there are Shia Iranian communities who are supportive of and loyal to the Islamic Republic. There are concerns that the conflict now between the United States and Israel and Iran is going to have severe and serious impacts on the global economy. At the south of Iran, there is the Strait of Hormuz. It's a very narrow channel that through which oil and gas needs to travel. Just at that tip where we see that very tip of Oman, just above the UAE, that tiny tip, there's a very, very narrow strait of water from the Persian Gulf out to the Sea of Oman, out to the Indian Ocean, that Iranian soil is very close on the other side. You can see Iran from Oman there. So all of this energy tankers have to travel through the Strait of Hormuz to leave the places where the oil is coming from and to get through to the global market. Now, the IRGC, the Iranians, have been threatening to attack ships passing through this strait. And so there's a reduction in the amount of oil that is able to get through. The New York Times reported that on Sunday, only 6 tankers passed through the Strait of Hormuz, whereas on, I think, Friday, it had been over 35, I think, had travelled through. So we see a reduction. Today, there are reports that there's subsequently a rise in oil prices of about 10%. So this is worrying. There is danger that if the conflict goes on for a long time, it could really affect prices of fuel and then knock on to everyday goods for consumers in the West. However, it's also worth bearing in mind that we're at a point at the moment where there is an oversupply of oil in the market, and prices, even though they're going up, are still within a range that is manageable. We have not gone above $100 per barrel. The economy has seen through times of much higher oil prices in the past. We now have, as I say, an oversupply. We also have efforts at the moment to diversify away from petrochemicals. And so there's a bit less demand for oil in the global economy. And of course, America has become a really important producer in recent years. So it can cushion that blow if there's less oil coming through the Persian Gulf.